probably where a lot of you guys have found my content, or a lot of you guys have questions, is based around this idea of a condensed conjugate split. And for me, in my history with using the conjugate method, I was running that 4-day split just as how I laid out. I was running that for a long time. The issue I was having was it's 4 training sessions, and that's a lot. And doing 4 days in the gym with trying to get to jiu-jitsu 4 to 6 times per week, it was just a lot of training, and I was having a hard time recovering from all that time I was spending in the gym. Because remember, it's not necessarily about what you do in the gym or on the mat that leads to progress. It's about what you do and can still recover from. And that all changed when I met my guy, Phil DeRue. And Phil, what is so awesome about what he did with Conjugate is he created a condensed conjugate model. So he took that regular 4-day training split and condensed it down to a 3-day or a 2-day training split. And the reason why he did this was pretty much exactly for the reason that I laid out and the problems that I was having. He was working with all these MMA athletes, and like to have an MMA athlete be spending 4 days in the gym is a lot. And they got their kickboxing, they got their grappling, they got their MMA sparring, they got their all the stuff that they got to do. It was just too much to try to all fit within 1 week. And so he found a way to condense it down to 3 days or 2 days. So let's talk about the 3-day condensed conjugate split first and kind of how you could structure that out. I'll say this, if you are doing 3 days of jiu-jitsu per week, I would say that is like the minimum I would suggest for switching to the condensed conjugate split. If you're doing more than that, yes, you definitely need the condensed conjugate split. If you're doing less than 3 days of jiu-jitsu per week, I'd say like, hey, you go to the gym 4 days a week, only roll twice a week, 6 total training sessions. That's not that bad, I'd say. If you're doing 3 days of jiu-jitsu and 4 days of lifting, that gets kind of tough. So that's why I like to err on the side of like, hey, if you're telling me you're going to jiu-jitsu 3 days a week, I'm already going to be putting you on game to some condensed conjugate format of training. So there are 2 versions of the 3-day condensed conjugate split. The first version is max effort lower, dynamic effort upper on day 1. So on day 1, you lift really, really heavy for the lower body, really fast and explosive for the upper body. On day 2, you're going to flip-flop it. So on day 2, you lift really, really heavy with the max effort method for the upper body, and then really, really fast and explosive for the lower body. Then on day 3, that's when you're going to go into full repetition effort method. I like to call these days jacked and tan days. You're just trying to get jacked, trying to build muscle, trying to get tan. At least it's summertime right now. So I'm looking out the window and the sun is shining. So I could definitely do some jacked and tan training right now. In December, maybe the tan part, you're going to have to drop off unless you're in a place that's sunny year round. Then more power to you. But that is the kind of like the first version of the 3-day condensed conjugate model. And what that looks like in practice is, okay, on day 1, you're still going to pick a max effort main movement for the lower body. So let's stick with what we worked with before. You're going to do your Zercher squat, working up to a 3-rep max. Then you move into your max effort secondary movements. Now, there's a couple criteria that I use, or a couple different ways that I choose max effort secondary movements. The first criteria is that you can pick a movement pattern that is very, very similar to the max effort main movement, but is just tweaked in some way. So if you did a Zercher squat, maybe instead of doing like a full-on Zercher squat for your secondary movement, you would do a Zercher pause squat, or maybe you would do like a heel elevated Zercher squat. It's basically the same movement pattern, but with some small tweaks to focus on some specific things. The second way that you can pick your max effort secondary movement is to pick an exercise that trains something that wasn't necessarily addressed in the main movement. So the Zercher squat is a bilateral or 2-foot squat movement. What we didn't train was unilateral. We didn't train in a unilateral pattern. The Zercher squat tends to be a little bit more quad dominant. So what we also didn't train was our hamstrings and our glutes very hard. So the secondary movement could be a Zercher reverse lunge step, or it could be a glute ham raise, or a split stance RDL, something that hits something that we didn't necessarily train in our max effort main movement. The third and final way that you could pick a secondary exercise is to not even pick anything at all until you've done your max effort main movement. And then based off where the weaknesses kind of sprout up and the max effort main movement, that's what you use to indicate or influence what you would do on your secondary movement. So an easy example would be, say someone's doing bench press for a max effort upper body workout, and they work up to a 3-rep max, and they're feeling really good. They're like, okay, I'm gonna put a little bit more weight on there, and it's like a 5-pound PR or something. They do 2 reps, but then on that 3rd rep, they fail at lockout, meaning that their triceps were the failing point, or their triceps were the weak link in the chain that caused them to fail. So you would just pick a secondary exercise that works on building up your triceps, because it's like, hey, what weaknesses were presented here in the max effort main lift? Triceps. All right, let's work on triceps. So those are the 3 ways you can pick secondary movements. If you're new to the conjugate system and you're new to building your workouts or following a training program that uses this style of training, I strongly suggest you just pick secondary movements that work on something that you didn't necessarily target in your main movement. So if you're doing a Zercher squat, working up to a 3-rep max for your main movement, do some sort of lunge or split squat for your secondary movement. Now, when it comes to your secondary movement, you are not going to be working up to another max. You're going to still be doing something heavy, but I typically like to stay within those more traditional rep ranges. So 4 to 6 sets of 4 to 6 reps, or 4 to 6 working sets, I should say, of 4 to 6 reps for that secondary movement. So what you can do is like, hey, Zercher squat, work up to a 3-rep max, go right into Zercher reverse lunge steps, 4 sets of 6 on each side. I got my max effort main movement done, got my max effort secondary movement done, and we are moving on. Once you finish your max effort secondary movement for the lower body, you jump right into your dynamic effort movement for the upper body. So that could look like speed bench press, plyo push-ups, medicine ball slams, medicine ball throws, landmine split jerks, landmine cleans. There's a whole bunch of exercises. But you do your max effort main, max effort secondary, then go into dynamic effort number 1, dynamic effort number 2. After that, it really depends on how much time you have available to train, because once you complete both the max effort and dynamic effort, if you have time to get like at least 2, maybe 3 repetition effort accessory exercises, go for it. If you don't have time for that, like, it is what it is, but that is typically where I found the best results, is like max effort main, max effort secondary, 2 dynamic effort exercises, 2 to 3 accessory movements, boom, I'm out the door. That's how we would structure it for day 1. Day 2, if we're taking all the same exercises and stuff, you're going to start with your max effort work, doing a floor press, working up to a 3-rep max. Then you go into your secondary exercise, which is like pull-ups, rows, whatever the case may be. So say we do chest-supported dumbbell rows, 4 sets of 6. After that, then you hit your dynamic effort for the lower body. You pick 2 exercises. One of them can be a compound lift, like since we squatted on day 1, we can then do some sort of hip hinge movement like speed deadlifts or trap par jumps. I think I said trap par, but I meant to say trap bar jumps. And then the second one could be like a broad jump, something like that. So you do max effort main, max effort secondary, 2 dynamic efforts, and then if time allows, you hit your 2 to 3 accessory movements, and boom, you are out the door. Then day 3 is really fun, because if you're running the condensed conjugate, you already got your max effort work done, you already got your dynamic effort work done, which means that day 3 can kind of be whatever you want when it comes to the repetition effort method. You could focus on hypertrophy and just have it be like a total bro bodybuilding workout. You can have it be a little bit more focused on work capacity, where you're doing some GPP giant sets. The way I would structure a GPP giant set on that 3rd day would be you pick 4 exercises for the upper body, and that is going to be, you want to pick exercises that can be very repetitive and not beat your joints up too much. So oftentimes it's something with bands, something with a sled, something with chains, something with a rope, and you're going to do higher rep sets that take about a minute to complete. So that may look like, okay, for the GPP giant set for the upper body, maybe you do 1 minute of mace swings, 1 minute of sled rows, 1 minute of sled presses, and then 1 minute of chain curls or banded curls. And then you just run through that 4 times through. You do all 4 of those exercises back to back to back, rest 1 minute, and then do them all again. That's like a typical GPP giant set that I would set up for that third day. I would do something similar for the lower body on that day as well. That's one way you could take it. And then the third way, or the third thing that you can do on that third day, getting a little tongue-tied here, is you can make that day all about conditioning. So remember, when it comes to the repetition effort method, we could use it to get jacked and build muscle. So you can just make a bro workout on that third day. You can use it to increase your work capacity and general physical preparedness, which kind of just laid out with the GPP giant sets. And then you can also work on building up weak points or bringing up whatever other weak points you have in your athleticism. And if that's your conditioning, then perfect. You put those sprint intervals, you put maybe some zone 2 cardio, whatever you're using to build up your conditioning, you can put it on that third day. That is the first version of the condensed conjugate 3-day model. Now the second version is very similar in the sense that we're still starting with max effort method on day 1, but we're only going to do max effort method. So day 1 would be max effort lower. You do your max effort main movement, max effort secondary, 2 to 4 accessory exercises, and then boom, you're done for the day. Day 2 is just going to be all about max effort upper. Same thing, max effort main, max effort secondary. You hit your 2 to 4 accessory exercises, and then you're out the door. Day 3, that's going to be your full body dynamic effort day. So you're doing something fast and explosive for the upper body, usually 1 to 2 exercises, and then you're also doing something fast and explosive for the lower body, usually 1 to 2 exercises. Between those 2 training splits, I have found for me, with beginners or people that are a little bit newer to strength conditioning, or maybe they're coming off of an injury, or I don't want to say that it is only for newbies, because that's not necessarily true. If someone's just getting into a phase of condensed conjugate training, I usually start with the first version. Max effort lower, dynamic effort upper on day 1, max effort upper, dynamic effort lower on day 2, and then full body jacked and tan or GPP or conditioning. I usually have them start with that. And the main reason being is because I want them to get used to doing something really heavy and then doing something really fast and explosive for only one part of the body at a time. When we start moving into things that are a little bit more advanced, I'll move them into the second version where we have max effort lower on day 1, max effort upper on day 2, and then full body dynamic effort. Because on that full body dynamic effort day, that's where we can get really crazy and really creative with some really fun full body explosive movements, where maybe it's like a landmine clean and jerk, a landmine snatch, something where you're picking up like a sandbag and you're sprinting with a really, really heavy sandbag or something like that. Or you're doing a sandbag ground to over shoulder and then you're throwing it as far as you can. You can get nuts with that second variation because of that full body dynamic effort day, which I'm a big fan of. I know not everyone likes to do it that way, but that's just partially my own personal preference. But those are the 2 different ways that you can do the 3-day condensed conjugate split. And then lastly, the last variation of condensed conjugate is the 2-day condensed conjugate split, which really is max effort lower, dynamic effort upper on day 1, max effort upper, dynamic effort lower on day 2. Now, because there isn't a designated or set aside a repetition effort day, you do need to make sure that you're putting in your accessory exercises on those 2 days. It doesn't have to be a whole lot. You don't have to put in 4 exercises at the end of each of those workouts, but at least two accessory exercises, just to give yourself a little bit of a pump and some, tender love and care for some of those joints as you're heading out the door.